important, not collectively, but individually. The principle being applied was that if you build up a young person's self-esteem enough, they will become resilient and wildly successful. He says this principle has failed us as a society. We were taught growing up how to value ourselves, but not how to value others. We were taught that every individual is important, but not the importance of the community. We were taught to love ourselves, but not how to love others. We were given constant praise and rarely criticized. And so we have a generation of young people who not only crave validation, but are addicted to it and need to have it constantly. We have an empathy deficit in our country. I thought that was a powerful article. It shows itself the way we look at athletes, doesn't it? We all look at athletes and we admire them. We pay them huge sums of money. And sometimes they have really bad attitudes, especially boxers. Maybe boxing, that goes with the territory, you know, that you have to have that kind of attitude like, I'm going to beat the stuffing out of you, and I am a lot better than you are, and I'm the greatest that there is, and so forth. Muhammad Ali, he had to be the classic definition of this, because he said, I am the greatest. I am the greatest thing that ever lived. One time he got on a plane, and he said to the stewardess, I don't need no seatbelt, because I'm Superman. And she said to him, Superman don't need no airplane. Put your seatbelt on. I thought that was pretty quick on her part. But, you know, the NFL season is about to start. And when we watch those games, we realize that there are penalties for excessive celebration because some people overdo it. There's penalties for taunting. When you taunt your opponent, like, man, we scored and you guys are wimpy because you couldn't stop us and whatever else they say, which I can't say in public probably. All these kind of things. And we look up to people like that. We emulate them. We want to be like them, our kids do. And it's kind of sad when we think about that kind of thing. You know, sometimes sports teaches us the wrong lessons. It doesn't teach us teamwork, it teaches us resentment. And how many times you see kids who are always on the bench, they never get a chance to play because the coach wants to win the game. They're not there to help kids learn how to be team players. They're there to win the game because when they were a kid, they didn't get to win the game, and now they're going to win the game through their kids. Their kids are going to fulfill what they couldn't fulfill themselves. They keep their kid on the court or on the baseball diamond, whether they're pitching, they take him out as a pitcher, they put him in as the right fielder. And other kids don't get to play. And many times, the fans are just as bad. They get into fist fights with each other, and you know, it's a bad scene. And it's just a bad kind of an attitude that we see. Now, experts say that we all have a sign on ourselves wherever we go, and the sign says, make me feel important. Now, somebody said, if you heed the sign, you will succeed. If you heed, you will succeed. So if you make other people feel important, you're going to be successful in life. Now that's a poor kind of strategy, you know, it's kind of a tricky kind of thing, but that's what the Pharisees were doing. The Pharisees had this sign on themselves, make me feel important, because I want to be more important than you are. I want to have the best seat at this wedding. And I want you to know that I'm more important than all these other people because I am closer to the host. And you need to know that because I am more important. And Jesus said that when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them a parable. Because Jesus always observed what was going on. I don't know if you'd want to invite Jesus to your house, because he might see a lot of things that you don't notice, and he would probably say something about it, and you might not like it. These Pharisees didn't like it. As a matter of fact, they were looking at him, how they could criticize him. He was being watched carefully, Luke says in verse 1 that we read. He was being watched carefully, but he was watching them. They were the ones who really were on trial, not Jesus, because he noticed how self-centered they really were. And isn't it sad? Here Jesus is at somebody's house. Jesus, the Savior of the world, the King of kings and Lord of lords, and all they can talk about is the pecking order. That's all they can think about, is the pecking order. I'm more important than those people over there. I've got more money than most people in this place. And I've got more influence. And you just want to shake those people and say, don't you realize Jesus is there? We could maybe say the same thing about people who go to church. Do we stay centered on Christ? Do we remember that we're here because Jesus is here? Because he's the King of kings and the Lord of lords. He's the risen Christ. And this is the Lord's day. We're here to worship him because he's here. That's why we're here. We're not here because of other people. We're not here to impress other people. We're here because Jesus is here. And so he tells this parable which goes beyond etiquette. This parable reminds us that God reverses everything. God reverses everything. When God looks at things, he sees them differently than we see them. Certainly different than the Pharisees saw them. But we remember Mary, Jesus' mother, when she heard that she was going to have a baby, the promised Messiah. Remember what she said? She talked about God. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but the rich he has sent away empty. Well, Jesus said that himself. When he came to preach the gospel, he took the saying of Isaiah 61, verses 1 and 2, that he had come into the world to preach the good news to the poor and to heal people. And it was all about those who were down and out, and those people that he was going to bless and help. And in the Beatitudes, we read where Jesus tells us that blessed are those who are rich. No, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are happy all the time. No, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the proud. No, blessed are the meek. On and on he goes. Because you see, God reverses things. It's like when Jesus told the parable of the Pharisee and the publican who were in the temple to pray. And the Pharisee said to God, God, I'm just so thankful that I am who I am, that I'm not like this trash over here, because I go to church twice a week, and I read my Bible, and I do this, and I give to the poor, and I support this organization and that organization. And Jesus said, you know, this man, his prayer wasn't even heard because he was talking to himself. He wasn't talking to God, he was talking to himself. And then there's this publican, and he says, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus says, that's the guy who went home justified. Because you see, God reverses everything because God can see the heart. And God doesn't look on the outward. He doesn't look at what we consider to be so very, very important. And Jesus tries to teach us here that honor is something that you cannot seize. You cannot grab it yourself. It's something that has to be awarded to you by God himself, by living for God, by living in God's kingdom and following Jesus. It means living by kingdom priorities. We need to learn that. Now, Jesus is not teaching us false humility. He's not saying, when you go to a party, sit at the worst seat and then hopefully they'll give you a better seat. He's not saying, always let others go first because then you'll look good, because you're more humble than them. Don't wear a button that says, I am very humble, because it doesn't work, I am very humble, because then you aren't. So Jesus isn't trying to teach us false humility. He's trying to teach us to look at life from God's point of view, from the end of everything, that from an eschatological point of view, we might say, because we need to see today and every day in the light of the last day, in terms of the risen Christ. And that's what this is all about. So Jesus says, he says, love your enemies. He says, pray for those who persecute you, who say nasty things about you. Pray for them. Because he sees the end. He doesn't just see today, as we so often are prone to do. He tells us that we need to be great guests. Great guests. And when we pray, thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, that's what it's all about. It's having kingdom priorities, and it's living by the way of the kingdom. Now, Jesus also talks about hosts with the most. We always say the hostess with the mostest. And that's what Jesus talks about in the second part here, where he talks in verses 12 through 14. And he says, then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back and you will be repaid. Now that sounds crazy, doesn't it? It sounds crazy. Now, I didn't do that today. I invited you to come to Lake Florida. Now, it's true, maybe you can't invite me back, but if you can't invite me back, you probably can't get there in the first place, right? So that wasn't very nice of me, and I know that. But I'll talk a little about that later. But I don't know how many of you watch HGTV. I always watch House Hunters. I like that program, House Hunters. Just guess which house they're going to pick. And I've gotten pretty good at it, but they throw me a curve now and then. But I find it interesting how often they talk about how they want a house where they can entertain. Okay, they want to entertain. Some people, they even go crazy. They need to have a place for their Christmas tree. I mean, they're buying a house and they need a place for their Christmas tree. Well, get over it, If you don't have room for your Christmas tree, get a smaller one. Or get an outdoor one. Put it on the porch. There's ways around it. You don't have to buy a house on the basis of a Christmas tree, but people do it. They do it because I think they're crazy. But forgive me because I'm judgmental sometimes, okay? But anyhow, we hear about entertainment, but the Bible, it really talks about hospitality. And there's a difference between hospitality and entertainment. Because if you are a hospitable person, when people come over to your house, they're probably going to kick off their shoes and put their feet up on your hassock. But if you are an entertainer, they'll kick off their shoes by the door. They're not going to wear their shoes into your house because you got white carpet. There's not a spot on it. And if you're an entertainer, you want everything to be perfect. And you just hurry and scurry, and you fret, and you do everything. So when you're guests come, everything is perfect, your house looks good, you look good, because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you want them to go look up to you, that you know how to have a perfect house. Whereas if you're a hospitable person, you don't care about all that stuff. You know, you still got some 30 dishes from breakfast sitting on the counter, and it doesn't bother you a bit, you know. You just haven't gotten to it yet because you're baking a cake or something for the person who's coming, and you just want them to relax, and, you know, how's your day been going, and what's new, and how's this going? And so you make them totally at home. That's hospitality. And Jesus talks here about all these things. He says, when you give a lunch, don't invite your friends, your brothers, your relatives, your rich neighbors, because they might invite you back. So don't have people over just to make you look good or to build you up in your status with other people, but think about the kingdom priorities and how you can really bless other people, how you can be a blessing to other people. Now, it's kind of crazy when Jesus speaks against what we might call reciprocity. Reciprocity is where, I'll do something for you and you do something for me. And we do that all the time, don't we? We have certain friends, so we invite them over and so forth. But do we ever invite people over who can't invite us back? Now, I've done a little bit of this because when we lived in Clare City, we had our place on the lake, and so I tried to get kids over who didn't have access to a lake, because a lot of people there have access to a lake through this relative or that relative and so forth. So I started a program in that church called What's the Point? And so it was just a program of bribery. That's all it was, bribery. I bribed the kids. I told them I'd give them things if they would come to church, if they would go to catechism, if they would go to Sunday school, and if they would not misbehave, that would subtract points. But if they got enough points, I would take them bowling, I would take them to the lake. And I did that a lot of times with a lot of kids. I had this expedition, you know, so I could take one other adult. My wife didn't count, so I usually took old Henry Fulkin. Henry had a stroke, and his one arm was in a sling, you know, but Henry did the job. Because his job was, I told Henry, you just watch if they go in the bathroom that I'm outside, okay? Just so there's nothing fishy, what Glenn said. You know, insurance companies, they don't want any fishy stuff going on, you know? And there wasn't. And so I can remember a couple kids that I had out there. I remember Brandon and Austin, and they were really nice kids. But then their parents broke up. And Brandon's life just took a nosedive down to the pit. It was awful. And I don't think he's recovered to this day. And Austin, just a few years ago, he was high with a few friends, and they went through an intersection. All three of them got killed. Austin's already dead. And then there was Harley. I remember Harley. He had a sister. His mother had left. She was gone. His father was in prison. And so this one lady, Bobby, she married his father in prison so that she could take care of Harley and Harley's sister. He lived by the railroad tracks in Clare City, not 50 feet from the tracks. And I remember, I did a lot of things with Harley, and I remember him sitting up in the balcony one time because he and another friend were dropping things on people's heads. I had to explain my way out of that. And I remember one time I used a whole jar of peanuts in the children's sermon. And after the children's sermon, I went up to the pulpit to get them. They weren't there. I knew where they were. Harley had taken them. And Harley was kind of sneaky. I don't like sneaky kids because I worked with a lot of them. And I wish they'd just ask me. I'd give them peanuts, you know? But just to take them, I don't like that. So last Thursday, something amazing happened. This pickup drove up to our house on Lake Florida. And it was Harley. It was Harley. I couldn't believe it because I hadn't seen Harley in 5 years because Harley had been in prison. And I can't tell you in public here what he did. I can tell you privately what he did. But he was in prison. First at St. Cloud, then he went off to Rush City. I wrote him a couple letters. He didn't write back, so I quit writing him. And he just said he had so many memories there, and that was the first day last Thursday when he could drive a car again. And he drove to our place. And it was kind of neat. Now, I feel bad. I wish I could say that I led all these kids to Christ. I wish I could say that, but I can't. But it might still happen. And I still pray for these kids. But it's a blessing, you know, when you can do something for someone who can't pay you back. It's a blessing. It's like Al said, you know, it gets in your blood when you go to the banquet and you serve people. And you're just glad that you can be there and be a blessing to them because it blesses you in a way that you could never be blessed in any other way because it's like the door of humiliation that you go through. And Jesus says that's the door we need to go through, the door of humiliation. If we're going to experience what it really means to be a disciple, we have to humble ourselves. And some people say, well, Jesus, why are you so narrow-minded? Why do you always talk about the narrow way that leads to life? Now, none of us complains when we watch a football game and they kick the field goal because that's what's supposed to happen, right? But what if the referee said to this one kicker, he says, you know, you kicked that ball and it was 40 yards wide. It was over there instead of over there. But you tried hard, so we're going to give you 3 points. Field goal. I mean, what would you think of something like that? You know? Yeah, you missed but you tried, you know? And so sometimes we're that way. We get critical of Jesus and we say, Jesus, why do you ask us to go through the narrow door, the narrow gate, walk on the narrow path? Why do you ask us to do those things? Why do you ask us to invite people to our house who can't invite us back? And why do you ask us to humble ourselves? And why do you say things like, for everyone who humbles himself will be exalted, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled? Why do you do that, Jesus? And why do you say that we'll be repaid at the resurrection? Because we want our pay now. We want to be paid in this life. We want people to appreciate us and applaud us and say thank you because you're doing a great job. Because Jesus wants you to grow in your faith. He wants you to see what's really important in life. He wants you to understand that this isn't just about mismanners. It's about kingdom priorities. It's about praising God. Because we always think in terms of profit and loss. That's what we think about all the time. And Jesus says we need to think about ministry. How can I minister to people? So, getting back to the athletes, I don't know, how many of you remember Jose Canseco? Anybody remember Jose Canseco? Or maybe one or two. Yeah, Doug does. All right. Well, he really thought he was a good baseball player. As a matter of fact, here's what he said. I am the greatest athlete, like a flower that blooms once every 100 years. Now that is really something, isn't it? I don't know if you realize those flowers that bloom once every 100 years, they have a terrible stench. Did you know that? They do. They have a terrible stench. The century plants. But anyhow, and then you compare him to a guy like Cal Ripken Jr. Remember Cal Ripken Jr.? He played for Baltimore. And he set a record of consecutive games without missing a game. He broke Lou Gehrig's record. And when he got to the Hall of Fame, he said, "Tonight I stand here overwhelmed as my name is linked with the great and courageous Lou Gehrig. I'm truly humbled to have our names spoken in the same breath." Isn't that great? Isn't that the way it ought to be? Like Dr. William Brownson said, he used to be my pastor, by the way, I don't know if you knew that. He said, what our Lord is saying is this: don't look down on other people as though you were more virtuous or valuable to God than they. And remember that it's always God who has the last word about you. In fact, God has already spoken that last word in His Son. The wonder of wonders is this: you don't have to make yourself acceptable or prove yourself worthy. In fact, when you say no to your pretensions and efforts to make it on your own, God says yes to you in Jesus Christ. That is the great reversal. And that is good news, isn't it? It's the good news that God gives to us in Christ. One other article I read, this is from Lene Boltheis. She lives around Roseland area up towards in Kandiyohi County. And she wrote an article here about living outwardly. She said Dave Workman writes about a USA Today cover story that focused on what makes people happy. Psychologists narrowed it down to 4 basic values. First, the happiest people spend the least time alone. That is, they surround themselves with friends. Second, they immerse themselves in activities that cause them to forget about themselves. Third, they don't care about keeping up with the Joneses. And last, they forgive easily. She said, in a me-first world, it's the outward-focused people who experience happiness. It's those who are self-forgetful, forgiving, and friendly, who discover true joy. It's the great reversal. The pulse of our culture is that happiness comes when I get what I want, when I want it, and how I want it. The reality is that when we kill self-centered living, we experience real life. And that's what Jesus is calling us to do, to follow Him. Let's pray together. We thank you, Jesus, for not only telling us which way to go, but going that way yourself. We pray that we too may be willing to follow the way of the cross, to die to ourselves, to live unto you, that your name might be honored and glorified through us. We pray in your precious name. Amen. Let's all stand now as we sing together, Footsteps of Jesus.